I can't believe it. It is time again. The 57th Saints training camp is going to kick off really tomorrow. The rookies reported on the 22nd, which was Monday. The veterans are reporting today, and they're starting, trickling in. Tomorrow is when they have to be here. So it's on us now. It seems like the off season just goes by faster and faster each year.
It's because we're getting old. Now we're not getting; we are old. That's why.
Yeah. That and the Super Bowl's now in February. Free agency starts in March. The draft's at the end of April, so it just feels like it's always football.
Yeah.
I was watching, once again, I'm watching old football games. That's what I do on weekends. And I'm watching the 1976 Dallas versus the Rams divisional round playoff game. Two things are interesting. First off, they have the NFL Today before it. And they're talking to Pete Rozelle. It's Phyllis George talking to Pete Rozelle. And she says, Pete, what do you want to say about parity in the league? It seems like it's the same teams in the playoffs every year. And she was right. Mm-hmm. I mean, throughout the 70s, except for 1 year with the Redskins, the NFC Championship game was going to be played by three teams. It was either going to be the Rams and the Vikings, the Cowboys and the Vikings, or the Rams and the Cowboys.
Yep.
That was the NFC Championship game from 1972 to 1980.
Yep. And I mean, even the AFC was Raiders, Dolphins, Steelers, Raiders. Mm-hmm. And then, in the late 70s, Raiders, Oilers. So it was all the same teams in the other conference as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and Pete Rozelle was he was trying to be diplomatic, but he's like, well, the draft is designed to help teams get better. Some teams are better at drafting than others. Not the Saints, but yeah, some teams are better at drafting than others and can build a draft, and it's true. And he pointed out the fact that the Steelers were never in the playoffs until 72, and 74 is when they started their Super Bowl runs. And while that's fair, it basically that era, it was the same six teams that were always there. And I don't have a COVID cough, Anna, but I sure got a cough that just will not go away. It's aggravating. So, excuse me, y'all. So anyway, I just found that interesting to watch because here we are in an era and we're complaining about how it feels like it's Kansas City and whoever's going to be misfortunate enough to have to go up against Kansas City again in the Super Bowl. It's starting to feel like those 1970s and even the 80s playoff years where it's going to be, you kind of know before Halloween, these are the teams that are going to be there.
Yep.
It's going to be Kansas City, probably Miami, probably Buffalo, in the Central, probably Baltimore, and in the South, AFC South, right now people are leaning towards the Texans. I would put them ahead of most everybody else in that division.
Easily.
I think the Colts and the Titans. The Titans definitely a rebuild, and Colts are probably one step above that. And the Jaguars, they're going to fire their coach before the end of this year. That's going to be my prediction because I didn't want him at all, and I know there's some Saints fans out there like who wanted him to be our head coach, Doug Peterson. But I watched him in Philadelphia, and I have friends that are Eagles fans, and they trashed that man. They couldn't stand him. They could not stand him. They're like, yeah, it's great you got us the Super Bowl and all, but we hate you. We blame you for all the injuries. We blame you for the debacle that was Wentz. It's just we blame you for not having a solid team that has gone back to the playoffs, and won another Super Bowl, So, and I think Jacksonville's going to be the same way because Jacksonville's going to be like, here we're on a division that we should dominate, and the Texans are going to get better than we are.
Mm-hmm.
The FSU kid from Louisiana, that's the kid from he's a wide receiver.
Keon Coleman.
Yeah, we talked about him during draft day, and I think he's from Opelousas area.
Yeah, good kid. Friend of mine actually knows him. Says he's extremely humble. I did a draft profile on him, and I loved his film at Florida State. I think he's going to be a good pro.
I like him a lot too, and just the benefit of having a team with not much depth issues except for wide receiver, and you can go get the best receivers on the board. He was a good guy, and that was a guy I was not going to be object to.
Yeah,
had he fallen to the Saints in the second round.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's get back to the Saints. Alvin Kamara is there. The question now is, will Alvin Kamara practice, or is he going to be what they're now calling a hold in? In other words, you're going to be there, but you're not going to practice. So it's not a hold out like it was back in the day where the guy's just sitting at home and waiting for his contract to get renewed. What have you heard, or do you have any of the latest on what's going on with Alvin Kamara?
Well, and as players nowadays are apt to do, Alvin made a very before or just as news was leaking out, hey, he's at the facilities, he's reporting, and he's going to be at practice tomorrow. An Instagram post from Mr. Kamara popped up, him in a photo with Marshawn Lynch. Saying I'm here so I won't get fined. Kind of a play on obviously what Lynch did at Super Bowl media days, a decade or so ago. We're hearing that Kamara will likely speak to the media. Will be one of the players available to the media tomorrow, during interview sessions. So that tells me he is indeed going to be out there in pads, and working out whatever they're. First day is always going to be light, so I wouldn't expect anything heavy. Remember, folks, Alvin Kamara is still under contract. And if he were to hold out, way back in the day, these holdouts, they would get fined X amount per day, whatever was determined by the team. Now, and those fines could always be waived, and frankly, usually were waived if a star player were to report within a week or two into camp. Nowadays, because the collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players union, the fine is set $50,000 a day across the board. Which I know you folks might not feel like it seems that much to a millionaire, but $50,000 is $50,000. Do the math. If a guy holds out a week, that's a whole lot of money. And also per collective bargaining agreement, those fines cannot be waived or deferred to charity or anything like that. They are what they are. So that's one reason why you don't see as many holdouts, as we used to. And if you do, it's a very short period of time, usually while the final details of a contract gets worked out. Well, here we are all assuming that Alvin Kamara is going to get a new deal, and I still do believe he will. But it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that the Saints are going to go to Kamara and say, look, the deal is what it is, and you're under contract. You're going to play out this year, and then we'll let the chips fall where they may after the season. We'll go back to the negotiating table then. I would be highly surprised if that's indeed what happened, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel that the Saints value Kamara greatly. And like we said last week, or I said last week, I think the contract parameters are there. I think it's a question of where the money is going to go, where how much is going to be guaranteed, and so forth. I think that's where the issues are. So
that and for how long they want to spread it out.
Right, exactly. So I feel like they're pretty much on an agreement on a lot of things. It's just those kind of details. How much money they're going to give him guaranteed, and how they're going to spread that out to lessen the cap impact. I think it's a lot different than, say, Hanson Reddick's complaints. Here he is. He got traded to the Jets, and he's not going to report to the Jets until he gets paid. And he's willing to sit for that $50,000 a day. I think he is somebody who's going to try and force a trade because he doesn't really want to be with the Jets. I think that's a very different scenario than what we have with Kamara. I think Kamara is more of hey, I just want you to do me right. Kamara is also very tight with his money. He makes sure that he spends his, as my grandfather used to say, he still holds on to his first communion nickel. But he's very careful about how he spends his money. Tries to live off of, not as a college student, but kind of live off of that, that humble life. That I've got all this money, but I know it's coming to an end. So I want to make sure I'm set up into my 50s, 60s, 70s, especially if I have the health problems that a lot of these former players have. I'm going to need that money. So I want to make sure that I'm set up. And I think that's part of this deal, this holdout is I want to make sure I get this money so I can put more of it away. And that's just kind of how he approaches everything, which is a great way of living.
Yeah.
To make for, interesting contract talks. So getting around to it, basically saying, I think Kamara is going to have a deal in place and he's going to sign it probably within this first week. I would be surprised if this carries on into the first full week of training camp. I could be totally wrong, but I just feel like based off of the way Mickey treats veteran players and the way these deals are put together, I just feel like there's nothing really he's asking that is just like, oh, that's a no-go. There's no way we're going to do that. Whereas with Hanson Riddick, some of these other players around the league, these owners are like, no, it ain't happening. Having Mike Brown of Cincinnati as your owner, there's a lot of no-goes in there. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. I don't care who it is. We don't have that problem. Thank God.
We don't see that in New Orleans, and I'm grateful for it as well. The Saints are one of the most loyal organizations, maybe in all of professional sports. Certainly right up there in the National Football League. And Kamara has been around long enough to see how this team has treated guys like Cam Jordan, Demario Davis. Max Unger, obviously Drew Brees as well, and even Michael Thomas. A lot of teams would have moved on from Thomas after that second injury plagued year. New Orleans held on to him for another year, maybe two, and it had the contract structure in place to continue to do so had things not soured emotionally. So Alvin has been around long enough to see all these things. His best friend, at least that we know of, his professional football mentor Mark Ingram, was treated very well by the team, so much so that he came back. Alvin has seen all that. So that's why I don't think that this is going to get ugly, and it's certainly not going to be a distraction.
No, and Ingram went to Baltimore, and he realized pretty quickly they don't treat you the way they do in New Orleans. He was supposed to be the prize free agent. They go and draft a couple of guys, and he's like, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to mentor these guys and work with them." No, we're going to pretty much bench you to play these other guys ahead of you, and eventually he got moved. They traded him. So, and that's true for a lot of these clubs. The Eagles right now are playing Moneyball. That's what they did with Hassan Reddick. He's a guy that produced very well, probably had his career years playing for Philadelphia, and Philadelphia traded him because they didn't want to pay him. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, same thing. Go to Detroit. We're not going to pay you. You're not getting the money you think you're getting. We're going to use you. We're going to use you to get to the Super Bowl, but we're not paying anybody. I can get draft picks for these guys, and I can get cheaper players for these guys. And he's playing Moneyball, and that's great for the owner. It can be good for the fans if you know what the hell you're doing, but it screws the players over. It's definitely the Tex Schramm attitude of we're the ranchers and you're the cattle, and we can always get more cattle.
Yeah.
That's something that now I'm going back a little ways. That's something that Dwayne Thomas got really pissed off about, and part of his issue with the Dallas Cowboys. Because if you watch the America's game, the Super Bowl VI, 71 Cowboys, he talks about that. Why he was so quiet and why he didn't talk to the media or anybody. He said at first he thought it was a racial thing. He thought they weren't paying the black players. And then he goes and talks to Bob Lilly and Roger Staubach, and he's not paying those guys either. So he's like, oh, I get it now. They're just cheap, So he says, I thought it was a racial thing. That we don't have that problem here, thank God, really, because a small market team like New Orleans, that we would really be in a lot of trouble if Gail Benson or Tom Benson were as cheap as some fans seem to think they are, and hold on to the purse strings and not pay guys. We would be a farm club for a lot of organizations. And I've already seen that shit, and I don't want to see that again.
Yeah, well, look, and you take stabs at Mike Brown and Paul Brown, his dad, before that. It's very easy to envision the Saints like the Cincinnati Bengals. In fact, the Saints were the Cincinnati Bengals back in the 70s. They drafted god-awful. When they did have talent, they didn't hold on to it for very long. And they were unwilling. Meekum was unwilling to pay his talent, and that was all wrapped up. When you sprinkle in bad coaching hires on top of that, you just had 2.5 decades of just futility and god awful football.
Yeah, hemisphere. That's the 2018 Saints, believe it or not. That's Cleveland, week 2. They figure it out. They do figure it out, but they smoke them pretty good for a while. Actually, one of the weaknesses on this team is Ken Crawley's playing outside.
Yeah.
And they actually got Eli Apple as an upgrade.
Hey, look, Eli Apple balled out that year,
That's
though. You
Ken
got to
Crawley right
admit.
there, number 20. But yeah, it's mind-boggling. They win this game, but it takes them a little bit to get going. And I wanted to bring. I'm putting this up here for a reason. Dennis Allen. I watched the interview with him pre-camp. His State of the Saints address. Oh, look at Mike Dicker laid out. Like I want to see that game. The first Browns win from 1999. But Dennis Allen talked about how they need to make sure. Oh, here, this is the Atlanta game. This is a good game. This is the spin game, Breeze spin game. So it's always fun to watch. But Ken Crawley gets smoked pretty good in this game too.
Yeah.
But Dennis Allen talked about, how last year, which I don't remember this, but I guess they did. Last year they started 2-0. He said he's not so much worried about the beginning of this season as he is about the meat of the season, the middle of the season, because the Saints have, for the past since 2020, the last big winning streaks they had, seemed to get into this rut about late September and October where they lose most of the games they play.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you spend November and December trying to get back up to 500 or better. And he said, I'm more interested in focusing on this team getting better in what he called the meat of the season. And some guy who, if you're going to get pissed off at Dennis Allen, there's a lot of things to get pissed at him about, but he's not wrong in what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it said, this guy just said he doesn't care about winning in the beginning of the season. He wants to win at the end of the season. That's not what he's saying. He's saying what we just said. I don't want to start out 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, then finish the season with going 3-9. That does me no good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be peaking in November and December when I need to make my playoff push. I don't want to peak in September and then spend the rest of the season fighting for a playoff spot. That's basically what he's saying. I mean, we want to win all the games, but unless you're the 72 Dolphins, it ain't happening. You're not winning all the games.
Yeah, right. And like you said, the 2 years under Dennis Allen, they were carbon copies of each other. The team started off fairly well in September, record wise. I mean, the play was kind of ugly, but they won the games. And then, they ended the season strongly on, both years, but it's that middle part. Once those leaves start to turn, to borrow John Facenda's phrase, once those leaves start to turn, through October and through November, basically until Thanksgiving, we would see the Saints go 1-5 and 2-7, kind of stretches. And you do that wrecks your season. And then it doesn't matter whether you win your last 4 or 4 of your last 5. You're playing catch up for a playoff berth, and we've seen that in 2022 and 2023, where you were dependent on tiebreakers, on a list of tiebreakers, the last 2 and 3 weeks of the season. The old saying, "Control your own destiny," is basically what Dennis Allen is saying here. And like you said, Alan, there's a lot of stuff to get on Dennis Allen's back about. But I mean, it's stuff like this. Those are just haters. That are, if DA went 50, those are the type of people that if DA went 15-1, this season was ruined because of that one loss and Dennis Allen coaching poorly.
Yeah. I mentioned that the Saints in 1993, and of course, when I bring up shit like this, people are like going, "Oh my God, I wasn't even alive then. Why are you bringing that stuff up?" But they started 5-0 and went 3-8. That season sucked. But when they were 5-0, we thought they were going to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, okay, we're right back. We got a new quarterback, but we're going back to what we did in 91 and 92. And it just didn't work out that way. And Hemisphere is right. The quality of the teams that were playing this year, it's really going to show what this team is made of.
Yeah.
I've been saying for the past couple of years, past 3 years since Drew retired, that 2017, 2018, and even 2019 Saints had these long winning streaks, 7, 8, 6 games,
through that October and November
Yes.
stretch that we were talking about.
Exactly. And that was how this team, they got that momentum going. That's how they got to the playoffs. That's how they won the division. They pretty much had everything sewn away by Thanksgiving going into December. You were going to pretty much know that you were going to make the playoffs. You probably were going to win the division if you won 2 of the 3 divisional games that were at the end of the year. And you're fighting for seeding now. Can we get that first round bye? Well, that first round bye is only 1 team now, but back then it was 2. But we need to have a streak where we're winning a lot of games, and it has to happen to me in the middle of the season.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's important. I've said in the outset that it's one of these seasons that if you survive that first 6 games by going 3-3 or 4-2, something like that, maybe only losing to the Chiefs, maybe the Eagles, you're still putting yourself in a great position for a good run.
Mm-hmm.
But it does you no good if after you do that, you go through that gauntlet, then you win 1, lose 1, lose 2, win 2. Yeah, that's no good. You need to have that winning streak going with these quote unquote easier teams. And I'm only saying compared to the playoff teams you have at the bulk of the schedule.
Yeah, and look, you're absolutely right. And I agree with everybody that's saying. In fact, I'm going to be publishing a piece here in the next handful of days. Breaking down the schedule in a way that is a little bit different from what people have so far. And outside of the Panthers to open up the season, and season openers, recently have been good to this team, but historically have not.
Mm-hmm.
You need to open up 1-0 against a division rival, no less.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're looking at Cowboys and Eagles. Okay, let's break it down week by week. If you can go 1-1 against them, 2 playoff teams,
Mm-hmm.
from the last few years. Those are also conference foes that you could be matched up against in tiebreakers. And that's very important to remember because of the way this team has missed the playoffs the last 3 years, including Sean Payton's last year. And then after that, we get into that troublesome part. At least it's been troublesome for Dennis Allen teams, late September through late November. You're talking Falcons, Buccaneers, Panthers, Falcons. And then the Rams December 1st. Chiefs and AFC opponents mixed in there too, but I singled out those teams for a reason. Divisional teams, conference teams. Right smack in the meat of the schedule where Dennis Allen teams have frankly been awful in 2 years' time. Maybe it's a Roger Goodell conspiracy. That's another joke for another time. But to your point, that's basically what Dennis Allen is saying here. That they have to. You have to control the controllables, and the teams in your division, the teams in your conference, those are the controllables. At home, when you play a team at home, that's a controllable. This team has only played 500 ball at home the last 3 years. I'm throwing Sean Payton's last year under the bus here too.
Sure.
That dome field advantage, where teams were legitimately afraid of coming into the dome. Not afraid of the Saints necessarily, but just you knew that you already had a huge advantage when you were playing in your stadium. That advantage the last 3-4 years even doesn't feel like it's there.
It really has been missing for almost a decade because it's really been since 2011 and 2013 that the Saints were really winning, 7 and 8 games at home. 2017, they lost the first two games
Yep.
of the season. One of them was a home game against the Patriots. 2018, they lost the home opener to the Bucks. 2019, they won against the Texans at home, but you still had a couple losses at home. You weren't getting that dome field advantage. And if anything, Allen's teams have been more successful on the road for whatever reason. It reminds me of the Jim Mora years, because Jim Mora seemed to win a lot at home and beat a lot of AFC teams, but it was those kind of weird things, the games. People were like, can we start, like, I don't know, booing the Saints or making them feel like they're on the road? They should stay at a hotel instead of coming from their house before home games, because they seem to play better on the road. So yeah, I mean, that's the main thing I get out of the schedule and out of Alan's comments. That's the part of the season. Oh wait, we got to see this. God, I love that play. I can't tell you how much I love that play. Drew with that spin move. It's just, and how would you like to be these two Falcon guys coming to tackle him? This is an old quarterback running at you. You got a clean shot at him, and both of you miss. Look at 34 pissed. I just love that. Really, against the Falcons, no less.
It's always cracked me up that, my favorite two quarterbacks of all time, as you know, are John Elway and Drew Brees. And two of the best quarterbacks in NFL history, regardless of where you rank them. I think most sane people or people with working brain cells would put both of them in the top 5, top 7, top 10 at worst. And yet, the two plays that a lot of people remember them for are running plays. Elway, that helicopter run in Super Bowl 32, and then Breeze on that one. These are the two of the most prolific passers of all time. And the highlight you see the most are running plays from them.
Oh, that and the quarterback sneak by Breeze over the goal line. He does a little leap, sticks the ball over, and pulls it back. And I think it wasn't until 2020 that someone finally stopped him. He had been doing it since 2009, and no one could figure out how to stop that. And someone finally did. So he was like, I don't know, 30-1 or something ridiculous like that, pulling that on the goal line. And in this game here, when this play happens, and they're like, okay, that's not a touchdown. It's me first and goal for the one. I'm like, Breeze is going over the top. This game's over. This is just a formality here. It's amazing. Well, that actually leads us to our next topic here, because we'll talk a lot more about the schedule, of course, as training camp goes on. But I wanted to bring up the fact that we also got the pup list come out, and also a story came out today saying that Chase Young, who is not on the pup list, will be able to practice come the first practice of the year. Now they'll probably put him on a restricted snap or restricted contact for those first few practices. You probably won't see him really get into the full contact until probably the scrimmage with the 49ers. But meanwhile, the Saints did put several players on the pup list, including Ryan Ramczyk. And Ryan Ramczyk is now officially out for the year, which is not a surprise to anybody. We kind of expected that. We talked about this early in the year when we first mentioned how his knee surgery went. Pretty much, this is his end of his career. This is a way for the Saints to keep him on the roster without him costing a roster spot. And you can pay his salary, lower his cap hit for 2025, where he'll probably announce his retirement. If I were to ask you to rank Ramczyk, first off, where he would be if you were to put your all-time Saints offensive line together, But secondly, where would you put him as maybe all-time great Saints players? And I know that's even harder because prior to 2006, that list was a lot easier to make than now.
Yeah.
You almost have to do two separate teams.
Yeah.
Saints from 1967 to 2005 and Saints from 2016 on. So first,
you do, especially when you're historians like you or I, or fans of elder statesman fans, because the majority of people on Saints fans on social media are younger, so everybody in their top Saints top 10, top 20 are all 2006 or later. But I'm like you. I hearken back to the Dome Patrol days. I do recall the standouts that this team had. Even prior to that, even on those bad Saints teams, there were players like Wes Chandler, a favorite of yours and mine, Chuck Muncie, George Rogers, Tony Galbraith, Henry Childs, etc. So I mean, putting Ramczyk on an all-time list of all positions. Oh, wow. I mean, that's a tough one. I'd probably put him in my top 25. Probably somewhere between 20 and 25. Because you have to put at least certainly 3 of the 4 Dome Patrol members in there. Colston, Rees, obviously. Ingram, Deuce, Vilma. I'd still rank Ramczyk's current teammates, DeMario, Cam. I'd still put probably Lattimore. I'd put ahead of Ramczyk, maybe Lattimore, Kamara as well. But I mean, Ryan Ramczyk has had a mark on New Orleans Saints history. I don't believe he's stuck around long enough at a high enough level of play to be in the NFL Hall of Fame, but he's certainly got his place in the Saints Hall of Fame, sewn up. And who made that comment? Anna?
Anna, yeah.
Anna, I would 100% put Rofe. He's on the Mount Rushmore of Saints players. He's top 4. Alan and I talked about that a couple weeks ago. And Rofe is the only one I think I could definitively put ahead of Ramczyk as far as offensive linemen go. I think Ryan Ramczyk has a real strong argument for the second best New Orleans Saints offensive lineman of all time. I personally would put Jari Evans number 2 because Jari had the longevity that Ryan didn't quite have. But I mean, between 2017 and 2020, Ryan Ramczyk was one of the most dominant offensive linemen. Forget just tackles, offensive linemen in pro football. Personally, I think I would put Ram. I would put Ram number 3. For a historian like myself, that means I'm putting them over guys like Stan Brock, Kyle Turley, Carl Nix, Zach Strief, Dombrowski. Those are some pretty darn good offensive linemen there. And yet I think you can make a strong argument for Ramczyk at number 2. He's number 3 on my list personally, behind Rowe for sure and Jari Evans.
Yeah, I should have specified make it, probably top offensive lineman because like you said, when you start getting to the top 10 all-time great Saints players, you're going across all the positions. You're putting Cam Jordan in there, you're putting Morton Anderson in there, Willie Rowe, Drew Brees, obviously. The guys who are at the top of the Saints record holders, the Dome Patrol. So it's hard. Alvin Kamara is working his way up that list. Mark Ingram, all these guys. So it's hard to because the skilled players always get the advantage over the non-skilled players because the only time you really notice an offensive lineman is either A, when he's pancaked somebody, or B, he's got a holding call and killed a big run. That's about it.
Yeah.
You really think about it. Like I asked somebody one time, I said, okay, name the top 5 centers that this team has had. And people are like, Unger, that guy they had in 2011, Della something or other. Yeah, it's like, yeah, that's what happens when you start thinking about that. Whereas, I've got a funny story about this actually. Anna's put what Anna just said. I always said Zach Street would take a bullet for Drew. Y'all know about, I've told this story before. Y'all know about Zach Street beating Drew in ping pong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Drew, Zach Street was playing ping pong and Drew came out and said, "Oh, I can do that." And Zach Street was really good at it. And he's like, "All right." Now he's not Forrest Gump, but he's right up there. He's a good ping pong player for a big fat guy. So they're playing ping pong and Street just smokes him. I mean, just kicks his ass. And he's like, "Yeah, how you like that?" Kind of thing. And Drew's, "Yeah, I got you. You got me good." Some time passes. Drew says, "You up for another game?" And he's like, "Oh, you're up for another ass kicking? Let's go." Well, Drew just lights Zach up. He's like, "I don't know when this man, this during the season, okay?" He's like, "I don't know when this man found time to practice ping pong, but he got good." And after Drew beat him, puts the paddle down and says, "We're good now." So, I mean, that just shows you how competitive some of these guys are, especially a guy like Drew, who is driven to be the best at every single thing he does. And that's what makes him unique. And that's what makes it hard. When you start trying to rank these guys, you're always going to lean towards who had the best stories, who are my favorites, who are the ones that mattered a lot to me as a kid when I was just first starting watching football. And, that's where I'm biased towards a lot of 70s players. A lot of people like, "Oh, they sucked." Derlin Moore, he sucked. Well, no, Derlin Moore busted his ass, and I could see that among a bunch of bad players. This guy's still out there trying to make an impact and trying to win the game. Whereas other guys like, "Yeah, we lost. Where you want to go out to eat tonight?" That kind of thing. So I get biased towards that. So I put guys in and rank them higher than they probably should be because I have an emotional attachment to that. That's certainly true for Archie Manning. I talk him up a lot more than people who never saw him play and just look at his stats. He only won 20% of the games he started, and that's over 3 teams. Yeah, but you gotta look at the whole picture here. I mean, look at who his coaches were. Look how many coaches he went through, and look how many players played with him, and all that other stuff. So I put a little caveat there. But if I were to go put an all-star Saints offensive line now, I am pushing, Kyle Turley and Stan Brock out and putting Ramczyk in at right tackle. Obviously, Willie Roaf's left tackle. I still have Carl Nix ahead of Jim Dombrowski at left guard, just because we won a Super Bowl with Carl Nix.
Yeah.
And he was one of the most dominant offensive guards, but his career was cut short, not only because he left the Saints, but he also developed MRSA in his foot, and it ended up costing his career when, over in Tampa. My center is still John Hill. I can accept arguments for Joel Hilgenberg, who actually went to the Pro Bowl. I was never been the Max Unger guy. I don't know why. I like Jonathan Goodwin more than Max Unger.
Yeah, so did I. But Max Unger, in yours and my book, Max Unger, you have Max Unger because you got rid of Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
And that's kind of whether I like to admit it or not, that was always kind of a strike one for me.
And I felt like we got him at the end of his career.
Oh, definitely.
He played for 3 years and then was done. And that I always, if a guy is a young guy and we get him in the beginning of his career, I'm a little more favorable, because that was Nick's. I mean, basically, you had him came in 2008, and he was gone by 2012. But you got him at the beginning of his career, and you seem to have gotten him at his peak. Whereas with Unger, you got him at the end of his career, and he was already tailing off. So that's why I lean towards John Hill, more than any other centers that the Saints have had. And of course, on the right side, Jari Evans, and then Ryan Ramczyk. That's probably my all-star offensive line. LaCharles Bentley is the guy who should be the Saints' all-time great centers.
Yes.
But we pissed him off, and I say we, the Saints, pissed him off, and he left, went to Cleveland, injured his knee, and then got Mercer in his knee, which was, again, with Carl Nicks, one of those things that always struck me as odd, that both these guys leave the Saints for more money. Both of them get injured and get Mercer, So it really depresses me when I think about what LaCharles Bentley, because he's a coach now, coaching up offensive linemen to becoming high draft picks in the league. And it just kills me that he didn't stay, because he would have been the best center this team has ever had. So with Chase Young coming off, well, first off, let me ask you, who are the other players that are on the PUP list? Because I wanted to talk about that real quick too.
You mentioned Chase Young. Chris Olave was the other big name. But like Chase Young, Olave passed his physical today.
Yeah.
He's still dealing with some back stiffness, but he will be available at practice tomorrow. Like you mentioned with Chase Young, most likely Olave will be very limited as well. There's no reason to push these guys. You know what they can do, and you know what they mean to you, and that's more importantly to keep them healthy once the games really start to count. The other players, again, no surprise here to no Passanio, Nefi Sewell. I misplaced my list here.
Juwan Johnson.
Yes, Juwan Johnson.
Yeah.
Those are the obvious ones. Now, the difference between Ramczyk's PUP list designation and these other guys, they attached a reserve PUP list designation onto Ryan Ramczyk. When you do that with a vested veteran, that automatically means he's out for the year. You can only do that with a vested veteran after the final cuts have been made. Because I had a lot of people asking me, well, he can come back in, 4 games in, right? No, not when you do it at this point of the off season. The other designations were just standard physically unable to perform PUP list designations, where you can bring them back at any point in time. Usually you put a guy on there or the non-football injury list if they're reported late to camp. Like if Alvin Kamara was a couple days into camp, you put him on one of those lists until he passes the physical. If a guy is a little bit slow to rehab an injury, there's no reason to IR him, no reason to reserve PUP list him, because you still expect him back at some point. Now, if Juwan has an issue in rehabbing his foot, or we expect this to happen with Passanio because it's an Achilles tendon injury, and probably Nefi Sewell too, coming off reconstructive knee surgery, any or all of those guys are candidates for that 4-game PUP list designation once those final cuts have been made. But I don't expect to see, in fact, I know we won't see Juwan Johnson or Tano Passanio at any point in training camp. And I would be very surprised if we saw Nefi Sewell at any point in training camp as well.
Yeah. And in fact, I kind of expect Nefi Sewell to get put on the injured reserve list but when it's all said and done. They expect to be able to reactivate Passanio and Juwan Johnson. In fact, Juwan Johnson, use Sean Payton's term, sooner rather than later. But that said, it also opens up roster spots for guys to come in that you can bring in to compete or fight for these jobs. And, you can't make the club from the tub, as the old
Mhm.
saying goes. I would not be surprised to see the Saints bring in a couple guys during training camp to see just what they can offer the Saints at linebacker, at safety, please, defensive line, and so on. I'm very anxious to see Chase Young, and unfortunately, I don't think we're really going to see anything, until the regular season begins.
Yeah.
But that being said, we started the show talking about players possibly getting paid, talking about Alvin Kamara. One player did get paid this past week. They went ahead and extended Rashid Shaheed. Now, he was going to be an exclusive rights free agent, if memory serves, had he played through his contract this year, but they went ahead and extended him anyway.
He would be a restricted free agent.
Restricted,
similar designation.
Yeah. Okay. To me, this says two things. Number one, the new kickoff rules, they really think he made the Pro Bowl last year. They really expected a lot out of him with the new kickoff rules.
Yep.
And probably are thinking we're going to end up paying a lot more money for him if we don't extend him now. But secondly, it seems like in this offense, at least, they're going to expand a lot of the roles, and you're going to see a lot of starters on these special teams now, whereas you didn't see them before because you didn't want to risk injury. Is that your feeling after you see that? I saw you do the okay sign about paying any more. But I mean, is that pretty much your feeling when it comes to you thinking about these contract extensions for these players?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we can all agree that Rashid Shaheed, not only last year but each of his 2 years in the league has been among the most explosive and lethal kick returners in the NFL. And more so than that, we're seeing very rapid and consistent growth from him as a receiver. He is most likely your number 2 wideout this year, folks. And I know he made a lot of big plays in each of the last 2 years, but I kept telling people, I'm like, you need to watch this guy run routes too. Pete Carmichael didn't use him as a short and underneath guy, which boggles my mind because Rashid's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's bigger than Deontay Hardy and can take a hit. A. B. He's a first-team All-Pro punt returner. That tells you that this guy is shifty in the open field. I want to get Rashid Shaheed the ball on wide out screens, on quick hitches, get the ball out of Carr's hand and into the hands of this legitimate track star, and see what he can do with it. And I know people are excited, and I am too, about what Chris Olave in this offense, Jawan Johnson, Alvin Kamara in this offense. I'm just as excited to see what Rashid Shaheed can do in this offense. I see sort of a Deebo Samuel role for Rashid. A lot more jet sweeps. Remember his first touch as a pro. He took the ball for a long touchdown on a jet sweep against the Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah. Since that day, Pete Carmichael has handed the ball off to him 5 times. You figure it out. I can't. I keep saying every week that I'm done trashing on Pete Carmichael, yet I continue to throw my spears.
Carmichael brings it on himself because it's like he needed a reminder of who these guys were that he had on this team and what he could do with them. We talked about this months ago, but Carmichael went back to work with Peyton because Peyton's a play caller. He's also a play designer, but Pete is a designer as well. But it's like Pete he's like that guy who plays Madden and knows these 4 or 5 plays that really, really work against every team. And that's the 4 or 5 plays I'm going to call until the computer figures it out. Then that's when all the effing bullshit goes on and the other team starts coming back and you can't do anything.
Right.
But, the Texas route. Okay, I like that play a lot. That really works a lot because, the defense is always in a cover 2 and they split. So the tight end's got a wide open seam with a linebacker. I love that play. Then they changed the defense on. Now the Texas play doesn't work anymore. But that's how Carmichael was. Carmichael just got in these mindsets. We kept running the same plays. It killed me last year how many times they had Carr try and throw to the back pylon instead of a little, just a little hook inside, where you screen your defensive back out and give you a nice big target, especially Jimmy Graham.
I was going to say, you have a
8-0.
6'7" basketball player and you forget about him.
Aim for the 8-0. Have him turn, put his back to the defender, and just push his ass in. And it's don't get me started. I know, but yeah. So I think Shaheed's going to have a big year. I think yes, Taysom is going to have a big year. Taysom's going to get double-digit touchdowns. I'm sorry, all you fantasy football people are going to be pissed because Taysom is going to be that guy who's going to have, like, I don't know, 7 carries, 4 or 5 receptions, a combined total of 50 yards, but 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
And you'll be mad because he vultured them in the end zone, on the goal line and stuff like that. But in real football, hey, all it matters is you score touchdowns and win the ball game. It doesn't matter who gets the touchdowns.
Yep.
That's why people were pissed about Kamara only having 6 touchdowns in that Minnesota game on Christmas Day. They were mad that Kamara didn't get that 7th touchdown to break, the record held by Gale Sayers. They wanted to get that 7th touchdown, and they gave it to Taysom. And we kicked the shit out of Minnesota, but they're mad. I didn't get my 7th touchdown. What does it matter? Who won the game? But I get it. It matters because it's a record.
Yeah.
So, yes, I think Shaheed, I think Taysom, and I really think that Kamara, all poised to have career years if this offense works the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to Ramczyk, they asked Allen specifically about the timeline for Ramczyk in his pre-camp meeting with the media. And he says they felt good after the surgery, right after the surgery. They felt good at the combine. But then that owners meeting, that's the first time that Allen said, yeah, it's not looking good. He's not recovering like we want. And that, of course, drove the Saints, even though we knew they were going to do it anyway, drove the Saints to make an offensive tackle with the first-round pick. Flogger will likely be the left tackle in this offense. And he said in the Allen, I'm talking about, said in the press conference that it looks like this is a great opportunity for a lot of young guys to step up and get an opportunity. That scares the hell out of me. I know it scares the hell out of you because this entire offense working is predicated on this offensive line gelling and working. If you had to put out a starting offensive line right now, who would you put out there?
My 2 tackles almost by default are Fuaga at left tackle and Penning at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Because if those experiments, plural, because moving Fuaga to a position he's unfamiliar with is an experiment as well. Either one of those experiments go bad, you're looking at Justin Herron, a career backup, Landon Young, a career backup, and Josiah Ezram, a 7th-round pick. Those are your fallback options outside.
Mm-hmm.
So my God, this has to work. It has to. By default, those are my tackles. Eric McCoy, he's in no danger of losing his job at center. Although I loathe him Cesar Ruiz is going to be your right guard. Let's hope he's the 2022 Cesar Ruiz instead of the Ruiz from 20, 21, and 23. Again, a little bit of a roll of the dice. At left guard, I liked him coming into last year's draft, so I'm gonna go with Nick Saldiveri hesitantly. Just like it seems like the Saints are hesitantly. Now, at least if that goes, left guard is going to be a battle all training camp. I'm writing a piece now. It's going to be published in the morning. I'm going to focus on training camp battles, at least not while I'm not on vacation. And I'm looking at left guard for that first one, and it's going to be between Saldiveri, Shane Lemieux, who has looked really good when he's healthy, which is rare. Oli Udo. I think I'm pronouncing that name right.
You're doing better than me.
I'm not even going to attempt to say his full first name. I'll just call him Ollie or Oli. And Lucas Patrick, the center guard that they brought in from the Bears. It wouldn't surprise me if Patrick won this job. Wouldn't surprise me if Lemieux won it either. But I'm going to hesitantly go with Saldiveri here. But this is going to be a very interesting battle to watch. So, at tackle, left tackle, Fuaga, left guard, Saldiveri, center, McCoy, right guard, Ruiz, and right tackle, sending a shiver up my spine, Trevor Penning.
Yeah, every time you say Lemieux, I immediately picture a guy in a Penguins jersey. It's not Mario Lemieux, but hey, if you get out there and do some fighting, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I mean, when somebody's gonna fight, it really. When we talk about the coaches they brought in here, and we talk about the experience of these veteran offensive line coaches, it amazes me that we are going in with this many question marks on the offensive line, given the experience of these coaches, unless these coaches really think that, it was really a scheme problem and a teaching problem.
Maybe
guys have the physical skills to do it. Again, that's a hell of a risk, that you think you can teach these guys to play this scheme and they're going to be able to do the things you want them to do effectively. Because, I mean, if I'm an offensive line coach coming to coach the Saints, I want quality bodies because that's how I'm going to be successful. I don't want people to judge me on crap offensive linemen because I don't have guys that can block with a damn. Doesn't matter what I teach, they're going to get physically whipped. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and it's probably more the fan in me than anything else, because I feel like these coaches would have been in Loomis's office at least once a week going, you got to be fucking kidding me. You can't expect me to coach that shit out there and make a salad out of chicken shit. I need at least chicken feathers. I don't even have feathers right now. I just can't imagine a coach saying, oh yeah, we got this. We can make anything work with this. Maybe it's because I'm not that egotistical. I don't know. And like I said, that's people were talking about on social media, and I mean mainly X/Twitter, how they're just not excited about this offense. They're not excited about this team. They're not excited about training camp. They feel like it's a Bataan death march, and it's only a matter of time before they finally come to their senses and fire everybody. And then we've just wasted a year of, the players who they like, their career.
Yeah.
Before they finally figure out you need to get rid of these guys and bring some real coaches in here and bring some real players so we can start winning again. I don't feel that way, but I understand not the Bataan death march, but I understand the apprehension, because there's very little in this offense. You feel like, oh yeah, we got that. That's there's nothing wrong with this position. We got this position. They're good to go. Or on defense, oh yeah, we got this. This is a strength. Or I'd take our defensive line or our linebackers versus anybody in the league. We just don't feel like that, like we did with Breeze in his prime.
No, a lot don't. But this is what you get when you're trying to slowly build your way out of salary cap purgatory, rather than just blow the whole thing up and start all over again. Hoping you're paying money to the right guys so you can have another 2 or 3 year run and then have to do the same damn thing all over again. The Saints don't want to operate that way, but to be able to do this, you're going to have a 2-3 year stretch of so-so play. In this case, mediocre or worse. Followed by question marks. How's Willie Gay going to be at linebacker? Well, how was Demario Davis going to be at linebacker in 2018? I think those two situations are very comparable or comparative. You have an elite secondary, but is it going to be enough if you don't pressure the passer? Well, no, in today's NFL it isn't, but that's why you brought in Chase Young. Can Chase Young stay healthy? We talk about the offensive line, and people talk, including us, we talk about them like they're trash because they played like trash. But Fuaga is a first-round pick. Ruiz is a first-round pick. Penning's a first-round pick. They traded up to get Saldiveri because that's who they specifically wanted, and McCoy's a second-round pick. To go back to the offensive line in a roundabout way. I do believe that these coaches identified the type of players that they wanted for this system. That's why James Hurst was lightly pushed out the door. That's why they didn't try to re-sign Max Garcia, Trey Turner, or Andrus Peat. They brought in athletic, versatile guys like Lucas Patrick, like Shane Lemieux, that fit their athletic profile. They drafted a guy, Fuaga, that fits their athletic profile. They moved Trevor Penning to the other side, as you pointed out many, many times, because that kind of fits his style of play a little bit more. Penning is a heavy-footed mauler. You can't get away with that on the left side. You can on the right side in the right kind of system. And Clint Kubiak has had good offensive lines wherever he's gone. John Benton is a very respected offensive line coach, and you know how high I am on Rick Dennison. I love this hire, man. All those Denver Bronco teams, that were churning. Olandis Gary, picked in the late rounds. Mike Anderson picked in the late rounds. Reuben Drones, a cast off by 2 other teams. They had multiple 1,000-yard seasons behind what was considered at the time to be the best offensive line in pro football. Well, Mike Shanahan is given a lot of credit for that. He was the head coach. Gary Kubiak gets a lot of credit for that. He was the offensive coordinator. The offensive line coach for those teams, Rick Dennison. The offensive line coach in Denver, Houston, when Arian Foster was running for all those yards, Gary Kubiak was the head coach, offensive coordinator, Rick Dennison. Rick Dennison, Clint Kubiak, John Benton have a long track record of success wherever they have been. So I think that Dennis Allen, again, you fault him for all the things that you want to. Some of them are deserving. In this case, Dennis Allen said, I want Clint Kubiak to run my offense. Clint, who do you want to help you run your offense? These are the guys they identified. These are the players they identified.
Yeah, and that is, like you said, that is the source of my optimism when it comes to this offensive line. It's very nervous optimism, but I can't imagine that they didn't forget how to coach. They didn't forget how to get players. They had to have looked at the film. They had frank discussions about these guys, and all the guys you listed that are no longer part of this team are all guys that the Saints said, these are guys we could have run back with, but we're not going to, because we are running a different kind of offensive line system where it's much more outside zone, where
Mm-hmm.
we need mobile, young tackles who are light, or linemen who are light on their feet and can do the things that we need to do to make this running game go. And Pete, you don't fit that bill. He retired, but I just drew a blank on his name now. But
Oh, Hurst, yeah.
Hurst, you don't fit that bill. You guys don't fit that bill. We're moving on from them. The question is, we just don't, because we haven't seen this. We don't know if this will work or not, and that's what has us scared. Because we have heard too many times this is the most talented Saints offense this team has ever put together. This is, they finally got the pieces to make that one last run. And what happens in those years? That's 7-9. That's teams that are very mediocre. Because despite all this talent and all these named players we signed, it just didn't work. Jarius Byrd, Champ Bailey, Brandon Browner, just go down the list. Those guys that, we thought should work and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just, it's tough. It's tough to be optimistic. And I just want to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I want to feel like like I did in 2000, where 2000 I had no expectations. I'd heard the guys they signed. I was excited about Big Wiggle, Norman Hand, but that's really about it. The Saints didn't look that good to start out with.
Mm-hmm.
But around the time of the Bears game, and then after that, when they went on that run, when they had all those wins in a row, they were stringing together, you realize this is a pretty good team.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot of good players. Joe Horn is somebody I didn't expect to do anything, and here he is. He's the number one receiver in this offense. And that's the feeling I want to get. I want to get, man, I thought A.T. Perry was going to be okay, but man, look what A.T. Perry's doing out there.
Right.
I thought this offensive line was going to be a problem, but man, they're just killing guys out there right now. Look at the holes they're putting out for the running game. That's what I want to see, and that's how I want to feel at the end of this. Real quick, are you going to have a Bayou Blitz this week? Okay.
Yeah. We're going to have it tomorrow. We did have a guest lined up, but scheduling conflicts caused that to be postponed. So it looks like it's just going to be Brendan and I, talking about more training camp battles. We mentioned the left guard spot. There's a couple very intriguing battles that I believe are going to take place on the defensive side. And offense. You know who your starting quarterback is, but who's the number 2 going to be? You know who your starting running back is, who's the number 2 going to be? There's a lot of offensive skill position battles, that I think are going to determine very important, very crucial depth for this team as well.
How in the hell is there going to be a preseason game in 2 weeks? It just, the Hall of Fame game. Drew Brees is going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame in 2025. And we're going. So I know you were talking about meeting us out there in Canton.
I'm an hour and a half from Canton. You damn well better believe I'm going to be there.
Good deal. Well, we're flying up there because we're not driving. We're going to end up flying up there. No doubt the Saints will be playing at that Hall of Fame game. But yeah, I hope the weather's cool. That's all I can say, because I'm wearing my Drew Brees jersey. But man, I can't believe it'll be 5 years next year since he retired. It doesn't feel like it. When I was watching some of these old games, I was sitting there doing the math going, my God, this is 48 years ago. That kind of stuff. What did I get for Christmas, 1970s? That's what I wanted to go to with this, because, we're talking about how we're already at training camp, because the Super Bowl now is played in February, and because the draft now takes place end of May or end of April, beginning of May. It feels like the season never really ends. But here we are. Here I'm watching the divisional championship game, and it's right the weekend of Christmas, or the weekend after Christmas, or right before New Year's.
Yep.
You know, because the Super Bowl was played 2 weeks later, so it was like January 15th, January 16th, these Super Bowls, and now we're not even starting the playoffs until January 15th or 16th.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in this stuff, but because of the way they treat fields now and things like that, it seems like even though the game is being played in January and late December, the weather just doesn't have the impact in the game anymore. The drainage is so much better. There's not mud all over the place. The snow drifts are just not all over the fields like they were before. Now it's just like, well, this is an indoor stadium, but the field's like this, and it's January, because they've got field turf or whatever they're playing on out there. They're not playing in a muddy field.
Yeah.
Look, you watch the drive. That Cleveland Browns, that was painted dirt.
Yeah.
And by the fourth quarter, all that paint was gone. It's just dirt. They're playing on brown fields in old Cleveland Municipal Stadium. So it just doesn't look the same, as it did before. So anyway, that's just me reminiscing about what it was like watching these games, just feeling how different it was, because that's why, playing in Minnesota in December at old Metropolitan Stadium, or playing in Pittsburgh on that painted concrete in Three River Stadium,
And that's what it was when you got to January in Three Rivers, or the Vet in Philadelphia. That was green ice is all it was, because that's and that it had the footing of green ice. I've been on that surface like that too. It truly is. It's like Alan describes it as concrete, but it's like trying to run on ice. It definitely. Field conditions, where you played, when you played, most certainly affected the outcome of games back then. And frankly, I miss it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you remember the '79 AFC Championship game between Pittsburgh and Houston.
Yeah.
That game is better known for, I think that's the Mike Renfro game, where he had 2 feet down, but they rolled him out of bounds.
Yeah.
But it froze, and then it defrosted enough, so you had ice all stacked up on the sidelines, but the field was just this wet ice rink. And there's a picture, it ended up being on Sports Illustrated cover, of Terry Bradshaw on his butt with his feet up in the air, and he had spun and slid through a hydroplane through a puddle. And the drainage now, all that just goes straight to the side, because there's a crown in the middle of the field. Yeah. So you don't have these wet spots, because it's not a baseball stadium where the dirt should be, these wet puddles that these players have to run through. It's not the same. But anyway, thank you guys for sticking with us through all this. Off season's over with now. We are now, it's football from now until February. Hopefully the Saints are playing into February. I'm welcoming a return trip to the playoffs just to go again. I remember when that was the, winning season and getting in the playoffs, that was a high mark.
Right.
Now we're like, if you don't win the Super Bowl, it's a wasted season. Really? I mean, it's only one team's going to have a successful season with that kind of mentality.
Exactly.
Nobody else is having a successful season. So hopefully we go that far. Bob's on vacation next week, so I'm not sure how we're going to do this or not. I'll probably have my son in here. He lives with me now, so we got to figure out how we're going to do this. I'll have to put him in another room just so you get the two of us, because him over my shoulder screaming at me ain't going to work. I don't need that. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.